Good evening, everyone. I now call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of Oak Grove School District on December 15th, 2022 at 5:06 p.m. May I have a motion and second to approve the agenda as submitted?
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Seeing none, the agenda has been set. The board will now recess to closed session to discuss the public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent, discuss public employee discipline, release dismissal, government code section 54957, confer with the district labor negotiators, discuss student discipline case number 222301. At this time, persons wishing to address the board on closed session items may use the raise your hand Zoom feature to speak. Please reference the agenda item number in your public comment. Is there anyone to speak to these items?
Rochelle, is anybody under public comment on closed session item?
Bear with me as I open Zoom right now to see if we have anybody. Is anybody raising their hand? No? Okay. Okay, great. We've gotten confirmation that no one is raising their hands right now for closed session items. So at this time, we will now recess to closed session item and return at approximately 6:15 p.m. Thank you.
Testing. Testing.
Rochelle, can you hear?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2022. It is now 6 p.m. and we have returned from closed session. I want to thank all of our teachers, students, and staff for your efforts as we close out the first half of the school year. Tonight is a very special night, as y'all can see, where we welcome 2 new board members and congratulate Member Pacheco on continuing his service as a board member. So we will begin with the oath of office, and I will pass it on to you, Superintendent Monson. Or,
Yes, thank
okay,
you.
thank you.
Welcome, everyone. So as mentioned by President Hernandez. We are welcoming two new board members to our governance team, and also returning board member, Mr. Jorge Pacheco Jr., continuing to serve in this very important role as a board member of the governance team for Oak Grove School District. We know that your volunteerism is so critical to positive outcomes for our students, for our schools, for our community. So we appreciate those efforts to give back and to serve. I'll be calling each of the area trustees by area. We'll start with area 2, then 3, and then 5. And in order for our public to be able to benefit from seeing the oath of office administered, we're going to ask each board member to step here in front of the dais and invite the person that will be administering the oath of office and introduce that individual to our public. And then they'll administer the oath of office. Once we complete the 3 oaths of office for our board members, we'll take a brief break that will allow for our newly elected and our continuing board members to check in and get some hugs and acknowledgement from our special guests that are here with us tonight. So are we ready? We are. All right. So we will start with trustee area 2, Mr. Diego Martinez. And Mr. Martinez, can you introduce who will be doing the oath of office for us? Press the button. Yeah.
All right. You hear me? Okay. I'm going to be having our next city council member, Omar Torres for San Jose City Council, do the oath for me.
All right, fantastic. Congratulations, Board Member Martinez. And now we'll move to trustee area 3, and we're welcoming back Board Member Jorge Pacheco Jr. and Board Member Pacheco, who will be administering your oath.
As they did me the great honor 4 years ago, I will have my parents, who I owe everything to administer the oath, and this time in Spanish, in a country that does not have a national language, which I'm proud to have my parents do, in my dad's second and my mom's first language.
If you can come up, please.
Yo, Jorge Pepe Jr., juro solemnemente que apoyaré y protegeré y apoyaré, defenderé la Constitución de los Estados Unidos, la Constitución del Estado de California, todos los enemigos, contra todos los enemigos, extranjeros y nacionales. Defender verdaderamente fe y la verdad de la Constitución de los Estados Unidos. La Constitución de los Estados Unidos. Esta es la obligación. Tomaré esta obligación libremente, sin ninguna reserva, sin dar o propósito de evasión. Que cumpliré y inicialmente considere que estoy a punto de hacerlo. Estoy a punto de hacerlo.
All right. And last but not least, our trustee area 5, Dr. Tanya Jaco, and who will be administrating your oath of office, Dr. Jaco.
Thank you. I'm elated to have trustee Maymona Afzal Berta, newly elected to the Santa Clara County Board of Ed.
I state your name. I, Dr. Tanya, solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation, or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations.
If you, everybody can please congratulate all of our trustees this evening. We'll take a short 5-minute break. Take some pictures in front. Yeah, nice to see you again. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. How are you? Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. Fantastic. Love to catch up. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have some coffee or something.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I know that we got I don't know. It was a good thing. Keep going.
Uh, All right, folks. So sorry to intrude on this beautiful night. We can wrap up in about a minute, make our way back to the table. Please and thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating and celebrating our 3 board members. I'll go ahead and continue the welcome, and then I'll pass it on to you, Member Pacheco, with the land acknowledgement. Thank you. So just a reminder that today it is a regular board meeting. There are many opportunities for the public to address the board, public hearings, public comment, or during a specific agenda item. If you wish to speak to the board, please complete the online request to speak form, excuse me, or use the raise your hand feature when the agenda item is reached. This will help me better manage the meeting. When it is your turn to speak, your microphone will be unmuted and you will have 3 minutes to speak before the microphone is muted. The Brown Act governs meetings of governmental bodies in California, and so your comments to the board must be specific to the agenda item you are addressing. And if there's no specific item, you are welcome to present comments during the public comment. The Brown Act permits public criticism of the district's policies, programs, and services, and of board members' action. Constitutional First Amendment free speech rights permit the public to criticize employees' job performance. However, the board will not listen to personal attacks, name calling, or the ridiculing of employees. Please note that you are attending a public meeting of the Board of Trustees doing the public's business, and that this is not a public forum for public debate. So Member Pacheco, if you can kindly now read the land acknowledgement for us. Thank you.
We acknowledge that the Oak Grove School District and our schools occupy the unceded territory of the Muwekma Ohlone Nation, the sovereign nation and original people of the skies, land, and waters where we work and learn. The Muwekma Ohlone people are the stewards of these land and of the teaching and learning that comes from and responds to the needs of the land and people who share it. May our daily lives and work, research, teaching, community engagement support the evolving vision of the Muwekma Ohlone for their community and these lands.
Thank you, Member Pacheco. At this time, Superintendent Monzo, if you can please lead the flag salute.
Thank you, President Hernandez. If you could join me by standing. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Superintendent Monzo. I will now pass it to you for your superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Hernandez. I want to take a moment once again to congratulate and welcome Dr. Tanya Jaco, board member Jaco, board member Diego Martinez, and congratulate also board member Jorge Pacheco Jr. joining us for a second term as part of the governance team. As we close out the 2022 year, we look back at many accomplishments for the year, and we know that there's always challenges as part of our work. Certainly, that has also been the case in 2022. And many times we bring forth and highlight the challenges, and we know that we continue to work on a daily basis to create improvements to those areas of need. But it's also, as we close out the year, to look at the many successes that our school district, our classrooms, our teachers, our students, our parents have achieved during this very difficult 2022 school year. The pandemic certainly have created a variety of impact points that have impacted various individuals, employees, families in different ways. And so as we recognize those challenges, we want to recognize the tremendous work that happens every single day and the commitment of our staff, our teachers at various positions that have supported all of our students and our community throughout this challenging school year. And as we welcome the 2023 school year we have the opportunity to look for additional successes as we move forward and look for opportunities to improve in those areas of need that we've identified as we are closing out the 2022 school year. I look forward to continuing the collaboration that we have with our parents, with our bargaining units, with our administrative team, with our governance team, as we put forth the very best interests of our students and our staff and our community at the forefront. I know that every individual puts their very personal best as we enter into our individual positions as employees of the Oak Grove School District. And I want to recognize that and thank all of our employees for that commitment and effort that happens on a daily basis for our students and community. I also want to take a moment to thank and congratulate our CSCA bargaining group and our district bargaining team for reaching a tentative agreement actually just today. So they've reached a tentative agreement on a 3-year contract and with similar parameters as we've agreed to with each of our other bargaining groups with OGA and AFSCME as well. And we look forward to taking action on some of the topics related to bargaining for AFSCME later this evening, and look forward to doing the same hopefully in January for our CSCA bargaining team. I want to thank Mr. Chuck Baylock for his leadership as president for CSCA, and also want to welcome the new president of CSCA, Ms. Maria Arellano, who will be supporting CSCA in that position and that leadership. And lastly, I just want to take a moment to wish everybody a happy, joyous, and safe winter break. Enjoy the very well-deserved time off. Enjoy family, loved ones. Take time for yourself. Take care of yourself. And we'll see you next year as well. President Hernandez, that concludes Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Superintendent Monso. So I will now move on to the closed session report. The board met in closed session to discuss public employee performance evaluation and no action was taken. Public employee discipline, release, dismissal, government code section 54957 and no action was taken. Confer with the district labor negotiators and no action was taken. And student discipline case number 222301. The Board of Trustees made the unanimous vote to expel pupil 222301 through June 13th, 2023, with the enforcement of the expulsion being suspended. Based upon successful completion and documentation of completion of all rehabilitation requirements, pupil 222301 will be reinstated to a comprehensive school other than the school the pupil attended before the incident occurred. At this time, that concludes the closed session report, and we move to the board organization. At this time, we will elect a president. This portion of the meeting is the board's annual organizational meeting. This allows the board to reorganize itself into a well-functioning governance team. On a yearly basis, the board has the opportunity to appoint a new president, vice president, and assigns trustees to board subcommittees. At this time, I welcome nomination for the board president.
I move that we approve Carla Hernandez as president of the Oak Grove School District Board of Trustees.
I second that motion.
I accept. Is there board discussion at this time?
You've led our district with incredible talent and control and grace. And I'm just excited to continue that stability by supporting you for another year of president. You've led us through some really difficult decisions, and we're in a better place with our district because of you and the leadership of Vice President Edna Gonzalez as well. So I support you as president.
I appreciate your words, Member Pacheco. If there's no other board discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. If we can lead the roll call vote. Thank you.
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jacob?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Again, thank you so much, everyone. I really do look forward. It's been challenging, but also just so rewarding being with the board and exec team, other members of the community, teachers, families, just being on the same page as far as values, where we're able to push the work even harder. So I look forward to another year where we continue to prioritize what we know matters, and that's our students and staff in the center of our work. So I really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with everyone. At this time, we will now open nominations for vice president. Sorry, go ahead.
I move that we approve Board Member Gonzalez as Vice President of the Oak Grove School District Board of Trustees.
Second.
Board discussion at this time.
You have also been integral to the leadership of this board, and I think another year of being vice president is gonna, I think, continue to prepare you to one day ascend to the presidency as well, which will be a really great day for our district. So I'm excited to continue seeing you grow.
I echo Member Pacheco's words. Of course, working with you, Member Gonzalez, you've definitely pushed us, I think, in the right direction, asking questions, holding us accountable, and managing these meetings, these priorities, all of that can be difficult at times. And I think you always handle yourself so well and keep us true to why so many of us ran. And so I really appreciate you, Vice President Gonzalez. A roll call vote at this time.
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jacob?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, that brings us to the other section of our reorganization, which is, let's see here. To complete the board organization, I will provide a series of recommended appointments and then request one motion and second for all. So I'll start with a list of, we'll go through it and then we'll discuss the committee representatives. So the first part is that the superintendent of schools, Jose Manso, as secretary of the board. Authorization of signatures in the absence of officers authorized to sign documents as designated in the bylaws of the board. The presiding officer of the board be authorized to sign documents as approved by or on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Then regular meetings of the Board of Trustees be set for the third Thursday of each month as identified on this agenda item. Such meetings will be held at 5 p.m. for closed session and 6 p.m. for open session at the district office or by virtual teleconference as specified on posted agendas and as permitted by law to include the date as outlined. For the following year, we will be meeting on January 19th, February 16th, March 16th, April 20th, May 18th, June 15th, June 22nd, September 21st, October 19th, November 16th, and December 14th, all in the year of 2023. At this time, based on feedback from the board, I'll read out the draft of board subcommittees, and then I will open it up for discussion to ensure that everyone's been placed sort of where their interests and skills lie. So with County Committee on School District Organization, I placed Trustee Martinez and alternate Trustee Pacheco. For Santa Clara County School Boards Association, I placed Trustee Jaco and alternate Trustee Hernandez. For Legislative Action Committee, Trustee Pacheco, and the alternate being Trustee Martinez. The DEIB Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee will be Trustee Pacheco and Trustee Jaco. The Board Policy Subcommittee and Evaluation Superintendent of the Board will continue to be the president and past president. Or president and vice president in this case, apologies. And then East Side Alliance would be Trustee Jaco with alternate Trustee Martinez. The Safety Committee will be Trustee Gonzalez, and the Wellness Committee will be Trustee Hernandez. I will note that we've reduced it to one trustee in each Safety Committee and Wellness Committee because of what we will assume in terms of the collaboration that's going to happen between these two committees. And we were afraid that too many trustees would then put us in violation of some Brown Act laws, as well as just having accidental board meetings. So we're going to reduce it to one in hopes that these Safety Committee and Wellness Committees can collaborate really closely and hold each other accountable. So at this time, based on those recommendations, based on the suggestions, I'll open it up. Any edits, any concerns, questions? No? Okay. All right. So then that being said, at this time, we can open up a motion. Again, to approve all the series of recommended appointments, we're going to approve them in one motion. So at this time, we can open the floor for a motion.
I move to approve the recommended appointments to committees.
I second. Oh. I shared the calendar right before we did the committee representatives that will be meeting for the third Thursday of each month. So I'll second that the Board of Trustees approve the appointments and assignments as identified by the board president. And then we'll still be meeting on the third Thursday, sorry. Okay. Great. I think then, do we need a roll call for this part? I think we do. Rochelle, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jaco?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. So again, with that one motion, we've been able to organize us with the regular meetings, the calendar. Sorry, I can hear an echo.
Sorry.
Hello? I think it's better now. Yeah, okay, there we go. So again, we have the calendar. No, you're fine. We have the calendar set as well as the board subcommittees. So I look forward to all the work that we are going to be doing in collaboration with others with these subcommittees. This does now lead us to item 5.1, which is public hearing. And so at this time, I will now open the public hearing on negotiated settlement between Oak Grove School District and the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 101. Is there anyone from the public to speak on this item? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. This brings us to item 6.1, public comment. This is an opportunity for individuals to address the board on any school-related issue, which is not a part of this evening's agenda. Are there any individuals who wish to speak to the board at this time? Okay. Gina Howell?
Black Lives Matter. Black voices matter. I will not be silenced or intimidated, nor will I be ignored. I'm a victim of racial profiling and emotional gaslighting by Genevieve Dorsey, principal at Indigo, Jose Manzo, and other school district employees. The OGSD board must complete an official, thorough investigation of the serious crimes that have taken place. A public report must be made. I request a board meeting agenda item for this report to be added to the January 2023 board meeting agenda. Ask anyone who is in attendance at this meeting to email your board representative and demand to hear the charges and evidence against school district employees who have violated local, state, and federal laws. These crimes are pervasive in our district and must be called out and stopped. The OGSD is not a place for bigots and bullies.
Thank you, Gina. Kira?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, all. Welcome to our new trustees. I'm so thrilled to see you up there, Trustee Tanya Jaco. It means so much that you're here. It puts a big smile on my face. I can't wait to tell my students tomorrow how amazing and historic this whole board is. I recorded this and I'll show them tomorrow. Tonight, I want to share on behalf of our OGA Equity and Human Rights Squad. We continue to do really amazing work and powerful work on behalf of the best union ever. As you may know, this year we're doing a service project. It's called the Gift of Essentials. And at every site, we have this box that Maripaz has, and we're collecting donations for basic essential goods to offset and alleviate some costs of inflation and just high rising prices. So we're going to donate these items to right now 7 identified Oak Grove families. We'll also be giving them some hefty, nice Target gift cards as well. Our drive officially ends tomorrow, but you can continue to donate if you'd like. We'll be organizing everything on Monday afternoon. You can also send in monetary donations. If you want to know how, contact Maripaz. And you can get some more information. I also want to quickly share that our OGA equity team and our LGBTQ contacts have been working really hard to ensure a lot of safety and action at our sites. Board and an E-team, you got a letter this week from them indicating some next steps and some concerns about implementations from our resolution. They want some follow-up on all gender restroom signage, safe spaces like our GSAs, including Christopher and Indigo, need a GSA or a QSA. And we also just need some follow-ups on the Progress Pride flags that I think hopefully are going to get repaired or hung soon, it sounds like. Our DIB LGBTQ action team met today, which is following through on staff needs. And I love the joint work that we have. It's really, really powerful. I just have to say that the LGBT resolution has been so beautiful. It's been powerful. And I just want to say I got married less than 2 weeks ago, and my full queer marriage was very, very celebrated by my students. There was not a flinch when I told them. They gave a spontaneous standing ovation, and their celebration has been even bigger than some of my family members. So I thank this district, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congrats. Bob?
Good evening, board. Welcome to
Trustees Martinez and Jaco, we look forward to working with you to make this district stronger. A couple of comments for tonight. Number one, I was able to talk to CBO Mark a little while ago about our concerns about the ongoing HVAC problems at Baldwin. He informed me that there were some repairs made. However, with the concerns that go all the way back through last spring with heating and air conditioning at Baldwin, I do hope that you guys keep in mind the needs of the very critical infrastructure needs of our school sites with heating and air conditioning as you allocate bond money, which was just recently passed by the voters. I cannot think of a better use to put it to. So that's my first comment. My next one is much more concerning. And I've mentioned it now to Mr. Monzo, who agreed that he would go out and do a site visit. But it has to do with what's going on at Davis Intermediate School and some very serious safety concerns that we have. At our OGA meeting last night, the site reps brought up a list of huge concerns, just shocking and appalling concerns. I can't even do it justice here on the microphone, but it involves violence. It involves intimidation of staff and students. It involves strangers hanging around after school, intimidating students. It involves alcohol. It is a mess, and they are very concerned. We need to get the resources that Davis Intermediate needs to make it a safe place for teaching and learning. I know it is specifically Diego's trustee area. However, I want to remind everybody that as a school board member, it is all of your trustee areas. Everybody has responsibility for that. I want to encourage all of you to go out there to meet with the teachers, meet with the staff, talk to the students, talk to the administrators, figure out what they need, and let's make this a better situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yolanda?
Good evening, everyone. I am an OGA rep for Davis. I have been a teacher at Davis now for 22 plus years. So I will give you the gist of what has been going on. School safety fights, the fact that we had to shelter in place due to a fight between students. The situation had escalated to the point where we did not know what to expect. There are many times during the course of my workday, I am bullied and harassed by the same students who do this to many other teachers. Many, if my colleagues are to join EdJoin, we are losing our good teachers. Things are just getting worse. As a teacher with 21 years of experience, I have never felt so concerned for the safety of myself and other staff members. Teachers get verbally and sometimes physically assaulted with no consequences to the student. They are simply spoken to and sent right back to the classroom. As an intervention bigger than detention or a Friday schools is required, the academy would be a great place for a small population of students. I really wish Mr. Monzo would open his eyes to the problems created by shutting it down. At some point, our district needs to consider the rights of 90% of our students over the 5%. I seriously hope a class action lawsuit is brought against us for the injustice to our parents and to our staff and to our students. I hope it's not too late. Student behavior concerns. I do not feel safe on campus nor in the classroom. We have severely emotional disturbed students, and the interventions we put in place are inadequate to address their needs. And this is the most recent one that just got brought to my attention today. A female student was touched in an inappropriate manner while waiting for her father to pick her up after school the other day. The male student said he was giving her a hug and it was an accident. The female student did not want a hug. His touching of her was not wanted. She got away before her father arrived, but did not tell her father. She waited until she got back to school and told trusted adults on our staff what had happened. When asked by admin if his hands went under her clothing, she replied no, it was over her clothes. She was told there's not much that could be done because it was not skin to skin.
Thank you, Yolanda. Are there any virtual public comments at this time?
Seeing none.
Thank you.
I'm
That does
sorry.
conclude item 6.1 public comment. At this time, we will now move on to 6.2, the bargaining unit comment. Are there any reports from bargaining unit representatives AFSCME at this time? CSCA, and then OGA. Thank you, President Berlin.
Good evening. Congratulations. I too am very happy this evening with the candidates that we have with Diego Martinez, Trustee Martinez, and Trustee Jaco, and Trustee Pacheco. I am very proud of the school board that we have. I feel very fortunate because we have one of the most diverse school boards and one of the most progressive. And so I am really confident in the work that you're going to do. And I feel very fortunate that you are here with us. So thank you. Thank you for stepping up and doing that. Our political action committee chair will be reaching out to you to invite you to participate in different town halls, obviously not all together. So be on the lookout for that. It'll be an opportunity. We usually hold those so that there's an opportunity for our members to share with you how things are going, and you get a little slice of what it's like for us and the different, especially with the different learning communities. They all have different climates and personalities. So it's nice to be able to get to know the members who are working and teaching and serving our students, what they're like in those environments. So as Vice President Krola had shared, as the weather has gotten colder, we just cannot catch a break with this HVAC system. So I have members did reach out to me when the heating went out at Indigo. And I was at Santa Teresa when I met somebody who has a child there, and the principal had shared that they were asking for portable heaters, and eventually the next day, I believe it was resolved. And so some kind of glitch in the system, but hopefully those kinds of things won't happen very frequently. I mean, I'm surprised we're actually experiencing a winter. So, but it feels like the HVAC systems and the systems, they should be running a little bit more smoothly. It's very difficult to learn when you're thinking about your basic needs of feeling very cold. I mean, I know it was very hot before, but now we're kind of moving into that other spectrum. And I know Baldwin had experienced that, but that had been resolved. Just a note, one of the rooms I think is still waiting to be repaired at the Frost Library, and it won't be repaired very soon. There's some waiting of parts and all of that. So there is an individual who is in that room. They're a coach, and so they do see students in that room. They were offered a portable heater, but it was one of these old portable heaters that it's all metal. With students and staff, that's not a very safe option. So I do know that they did purchase for Indigo and maybe another school, some more of the more up-to-date portable heaters. So we don't want to exacerbate situations by having another situation. So I would really urge us to maybe our facilities to look at those heaters to make sure that they are still safe for use and that they don't get too hot where they're going to be in environments with students and staff. So just make sure that those are still safe. And I will also speak to the situation at Davis. This is the second time I have shared that. I have had the meeting with Assistant Superintendent Bowles, and we have had some conversation about it. I think we need to escalate this so that we have another discussion. So we have requested a meeting with Assistant Superintendent Bowles and Chidas. The last time I was here last month, I shared that we should involve the community, that we should involve the Davis community, which includes the families and the whole staff, to possibly have some kind of town hall where we are working on these issues together. It's hard for just admin to work on these systems. It's a whole system that we're trying to improve. And I think putting, having you all go there for a week and a half as admin to supervise during lunch, I think that helped, but that kind of work isn't sustainable. We need some short-term, but we also need long-term solutions that are going to change it back into a real positive learning community, learning climate, one where students and staff feel safe and cared for and don't feel threatened. From what the site rep Yolanda Limos had described, that's a very traumatic experience that young person experienced. I have experienced that. And I didn't share it with anybody. I didn't know what to do. And so for a student to be able to do that and share that with a trusted adult, I think that speaks to the kind of people who are at Davis. Those are the people that we want to keep at Davis. And how are we going to do that? We've been calling out for help. We need a more urgent solution. We need to actually dive in deep and see what can we do for the community and involve more people. We need to involve the community. We need to involve our families. How can we support the students? How can we support the staff there? So I also wanted to share with the board that I have met during our associate president's meeting. We meet monthly, and I have shared at least 2 times about community schools. I can share more information with you as a board. I'm urging the executive team to really explore this option for us and apply for a planning grant. Community schools model is a way to transform the way we have school and the way that we make decisions as a community in Oak Grove. So not just the folks that are in this room or the people sitting on the dais or the people surrounding it. It involves the families and even students and educators and other staff to help guide those decisions so that this becomes our school district. And there's a lot of ownership in that. And so I'll share more information with you, and you can read through it at your, when you get it. I will be calling on Superintendent Mazzo to have another meeting about this so that we can really dive into it. I'm not going to stop talking about it until we actually do it. So just as a little FYI, the planning grants are about 200,000 and some change. And it's the beginning of the process of planning for what that model looks like. And so it involves, once you get it, you can assess the needs of each community. We could start with the Davis Learning Community, and I'm thinking particularly about Davis itself. We can begin to have those kinds of collaborative conversations. We can have and involve all of our education partners in those discussions. That's what we're talking about, is the crisis that we are experiencing at Davis. They are ripe for something like this. And I would like us to help that community. And us not doing something about it is almost like compliance. Like, we're normalizing this as an experience for students and staff at that school. So Another thing I wanted, so I'll send you more information about that. I wanted to also share that we are in support of CSCA. We're happy that they are reaching some agreements in negotiations. We do stand in solidarity with them, especially with the health clerks. I recently learned that the health clerks' hours are about 8 hours, and I learned that they're getting reduced, or they're having that conversation that it's being suggested that they reduce the number of hours to 6. We need to keep those 8 hours. We need more time. We don't need less time. Especially with the cases of COVID that are on the rise. Flu is also around, so is RSV. It doesn't make sense to reduce those hours, not at this time. We need the nurses receive that kind of support from the health clerks. They support our students. If we are removing those hours, we're removing those kinds of support. So I really need your support to question the decision to reduce those hours, because that doesn't make sense at this time. We need that time. And our nurses are there. We have 3 nurses. We have LVNs also, but they also rely on the help of our health clerks in their work. So reducing those hours doesn't make any sense. I do want to thank publicly the past president now, my CSCA partner, Chuck Baylott, for his leadership and openness to working with OGA, working with me personally for the past several years. I understand he will still be vice president, so I'll still be able to work with him. I do want to wish everyone a very healthy, safe season, one that's filled with hope and joy and togetherness and safety. This concludes my report.
Thank you, President Berlin. At this time, Superintendent Monzo, if you can please present the consent agenda.
Yes, I'd like to request the board approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I second. Is there any public comment at this time regarding the consent agenda? Trustees, any comments? Seeing no comments, roll call, please.
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Consent agenda has been approved. This does bring us to our action items. The first of the night is the negotiated settlement between Oak Grove School District and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME Local 101.
Thank you, President Hernandez. I just want to take a moment to thank the bargaining team for AFSCME and also our district bargaining team for their work and reaching to this agreement. So I'll have our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Chaitis, further introduce this item.
Thank you, Superintendent Monzo and President Carla Hernandez, for this opportunity. Very excited that through collaboration with AFSCME, we were able to reach a tentative agreement. I want to congratulate President Michael Pointner and Vice President Frankie Robles for their leadership and also their team. It's great to always focus on our district and moving it forward, advancing our district. And I'm also happy to say that unanimously, that means everybody voted yes to approve their new contract for the next 3 years. So with this, I would like to recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed agreement between Oak Grove School District and American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, AFSCME, Local 101. And we affirm that it meets the requirements under Assembly Bill 1200 and that we are able to fiscally implement this agreement. Thank you, President Hernandez.
Thank you, Dr. Chaitis. Again, great work, and we appreciate so much the collaboration May I please have a first and second for a motion? So I move that the Board of Trustees approve the proposed changes in the agreement between the Oak Grove School District and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME Local 101, and affirm that it meets the requirements under AB 1200 to be able to fiscally implement this agreement.
Second.
Are there any public comments at this time? I'm seeing none in person.
None virtually.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from trustees?
Just thank you to the team, the negotiation members of our district, and on the other side, our bargaining unit members. It's amazing to see just multiple 3-year agreements, and I'm sure it's going to lighten the load of work for everybody. So I think it's a reflection of the great collaborative spirit that is embedded in our district. And thank you to the service of all of our classified employees.
Thank you, Member Pacheco. All right, seeing no other comments, we have a first and second. May I please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jacob?
Aye.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. This now brings us to our second item, the first interim report. I'll now pass this on to you, Superintendent Monzo. Thank you.
Thank you, President Hernandez. As you're aware, there are specific benchmark points where we provide an update to the board related to our budget. And this is one of those benchmark times for the first interim. And I want to welcome our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Mark Evans, which will be presenting his first interim report to our board and our community. So I'll turn it over to our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Mark Evans. And before I have him further introduce this item, I just want to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that happens behind the scenes with our business office staff, with Melina and Ruth, our director, and our manager in human resources and business services division as well. And so just a lot of work behind the scenes that happens in order to get to this benchmark point. So I know that Mr. Evans, I'm stealing some of your thunder, but I just had to also acknowledge the tremendous amount of work and diligence that they have in getting us to this point.
Thank you,
Associate Superintendent Evans.
Thank you for acknowledging them. I very much appreciate their work and support in getting me to this point. And Board of Trustees, thank you for the time to present to you tonight on our budget at first interim. This is our budget as of October 31st. And I think we can go to the next slide. We'll just kind of review quickly the things we're going to look at, the budget assumptions, and review those. Talk about those a little bit. The changes from the adoption on June 16th to now. As is typical for most school districts, they're building their budget off the May revision. And by the time you adopt the budget, the state legislature obviously is still doing their work, and we get all the trailer bills and the final budget coming. So this is where we kind of reconcile those two things. And then really a look at the multi-year projections and what the budget looks like up through 24-25. Next slide. Some of the assumptions we build the budget on are enrollment. That continues to decline. Can I have more than 3 minutes? Currently, we're in the process of getting a new demographic study done, but we are continuing to trend down, as is the whole county of Santa Clara and much of the state. So we're following the trend lines statewide for most districts. COLAs we calculate out in the future based on the SSC dartboard. School Services of California is the organization that issues the dartboard. And so we use their guidelines on a lot of the economic fronts. Unduplicated pupil count, we're assuming it maintains its status at about 40%. This actually was a big concern for school districts. The Universal Meal Program, which has been a great success across the state and especially here in Oak Grove, we're serving 93% more students, almost doubled the number of breakfasts and 10% more lunches. It's a great program, but much of our funding comes from those applications for the free and reduced meals. and districts were very concerned that that might draw down the unduplicated pupil count because nobody would need to apply. There was a great lift by sites, by Sheetal Singh, by the Food Services Department to communicate for everyone to submit applications. And they did actually 5 times as many as is typical, almost 5,000. And we not only sustained our rate of free and reduced lunches, we increased it based on our, even though we were declining enrollment, we increased there. And that's a good chunk of what our unduplicated pupil count is. That's socially economically disadvantaged, foster care, homeless, and English learners. So that's what makes up the unduplicated pupil count. Another assumption is that in the past, we've had some state funds to help offset pension increases. Those have not been coming in lately. On the upside, the pension increases are plateauing. The state teachers retirement system, the pension system for the certificated side of the house, is at 19.1% and will remain flat. So while they're still substantially larger than they were for the reorganization of the pension system, they're not growing anymore. So they'll continue to be a large part of the budget, but not increasing by. On the classified side of the house, the PERS, the Public Employees Retirement System, that fluctuates each year based on the PERS board. It's about 25% now and will probably range in the 25 to 23% in the next couple of years. So again, a plateauing, maybe even a little relief on that side. And another big thing that has helped our budget tremendously in the last few years has been very large influxes of one-time dollars. On the federal side with all the COVID relief funds, but also on the state side with some substantial budget windfalls that have been given out as one-time dollars. We don't anticipate that going forward. If it does happen, that will be good news for us, but we don't budget based on that. So we'll use those funds strategically because we'll have a very healthy inflow and we have a few years to spend those down. So next slide, please. I wanted to share with you kind of the dartboard and how I use that. The LCFF is the local control funding formula. And that's how we get our primary funding. The vast majority of our funding comes through that. And we build off of the Department of Finance's COLA, which is kind of a national norm for government agencies and how much the inflation factor is. So you see what we're projecting is in 23-24, there will be about a 5.38% COLA, dropping a little bit year after year there. These are constantly moving. Come January with the governor's proposal, we'll get a better idea and they'll update those numbers and they'll refine even again before we get to next May and the actual 23-24 numbers. On the next slide, it kind of goes into our base grant. And this is the primary source of our revenue. And as you see, it's divided by grade spans. So we get a certain amount for our K3 students, which also now is TK3 students, 4, 6, 7, 8, and then the high school rate is there as well. You'll see what it was last year in 21-22, and then we had a COLA last year of 6.56. There was an additional LCF investment of another 6.7%. That's the $542 for K3, and that runs across. This is actually a very good benefit because it's ongoing money, not one-time money. So we'll get to grow with that. And then when they have growth in the future, it'll build off of that as well. So also in K3, we get a stipend, a 10.4% increase for class size reduction. And then at the bottom, you'll see the amount we get per student per grade level. So for our district as a TK8, probably in the close to 10,000 per student on the base grant. This is not the supplemental. The supplemental are funds we get for those unduplicated pupils. So additional revenues are generated for additional services for those students of need. And this is not included here. It's added on top of that. So it would be another 20% of each of these numbers for each student who qualifies. And then the next slide are just some economic factors that come in. The consumer price index, what we get for the California lottery, the pension rates down there for CalSTRS and CalPERS, minimum wage. Those are just things we try to stay aware of and all. So those are, that's one of the primary sources we use to kind of look to the future and build our budget. On the revenue side, let me just skip right past the piggy bank. I wanted to talk about revenue because one of the main drivers of revenue is actually our average daily attendance. That's the way our state funds schools. It's about 6 states that about do that. And there's enrollment, there's our students who are actually registered to attend our schools, but then there's the average daily attendance, which is the percentage of time students are actually present. And that's how we are funded. The estimated daily rate for attendance in our district is about $78 per student. And that's a lot of factors go into that number for the base grant, for the supplemental grant, for other funding that's based on ADA rates. And that's for a student who comes about 96% of the time. That was our norm pre-pandemic, about a 96% attendance rate. So I developed a model, and just a model, but on the next slide, looking at how students are funded. If we look at a student who's coming every day, all the time, 100%, you'll see that they would generate 180 days at 100% at $78 a day would be a good $14,000. A typical student in our district, and this is typical across the state, about 96% attendance. You're not getting the whole 180 days, but you're still generating $13,000, almost $500. And then a student who misses 2 weeks of school brings that attendance rate down to 92.2, which is where we were starting the year. We're kind of rolling around 93% right now. But you can see that difference of over $500 a day times all of our students times all of our day, ends up being a $4.7 million difference in our budget that we generate. Now, attendance from the financial standpoint is only one lens. I think Assistant Superintendent Bowles has talked about attendance in the other lens, which is really important, especially for our LCAP goals. Being here improves the academics, it improves the belonging, it improves the connectedness, and it's very strongly tied to long-term success for students. So I think attendance is something we need to look at. It's a spiral up if we can optimize it and all. So, but it's also a fiscal element as well in the calculation, and very much so in California. The next slide actually shows the revenues that we had both at the budget and here at first interim, and some substantial deltas. At the time of the budget, there was no additional funding beyond the COLA. So you'll see on that first line, the LCFF, and that's the base, and our supplemental amount was 98.3 million. When the state increased the base funding by the additional 6.7%, we went up to 105 million. So, and again, that's kind of our base that will grow on. But you'll see in the out years, even though we have COLAs, it doesn't grow and actually subsides. And that's the impact of the declining enrollment. On the federal side, again, a big push up, one-time dollars, or oftentimes the federal dollars don't arrive in the year we're told about them. So we actually accrue them in the following year. So that's the big jump there. And other state was a big shift also with the one-time dollars, like the Learning Recovery, the Arts and Music Grant, ELOP, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program for after school and all. That would all be in that category as well. And you'll see in the out years, after those one-time dollars disappear, all of those numbers kind of go back to where they're historically normed pre-pandemic. Other local, same pattern. This one is unique in that we occasionally get money from the former redevelopment agencies. We never know when that's going to come, but we do have some coming in this year. We found out about that since budget. So that ticked up in first interim, but you'll again see that our local revenues, which is our leases, our parcel tax, things like that, will norm back to where they were. So a sizable increase in revenues, but kind of a falling back in the years ahead to in the $130 million range. And again, those are the assumptions built on the COLAs and all that we've given at this time. Next slide kind of gives more of a graphic of it. And I think this graphic is helpful in that the dark blue, the red, and the green show the total LCFF. The dark blue is what I talked about as the base grant. The red is the supplemental funds we get for our unduplicated pupils. And then the green is actually money we get for special ed. That money comes in, it largely passes through because it goes back to the self-provide services for those students.
Really
I can answer
quickly.
for you.
Yeah, really quick. I think you reviewed this, but I may have missed it. I know when we approved our budget, we had 8.2 million in other local funds, and then it boosted to 10. Where do those additional funds come from?
That was the redevelopment agency funds. The redevelopment agencies were statewide agencies that were tied and collected property taxes.
Mhm.
They were disbanded when Governor Brown was in office, but as they were disbanded, they continue to get doled out to cities and schools.
Okay.
I couldn't explain to you how or why that happens, but I know we get a check every once in a while.
Nice. Thanks.
We'll jump up to expenses and look at it on the outgoing side. The main change in expenses here in the certificated staff is that we had settled with OGEA, but it didn't get into budget because they were happening at the same time. So the increase in certificated is largely the salary increases that we were able to accomplish in negotiations with OGEA. And you'll see those compound and go out through the 24-25 school year. Classified, even though you settled for Ask Me Tonight, it was not formalized until tonight. So those and CSEA are not included. There are no increases at this time in budget. By the time we do second interim in March, we will have those all included, and that will show an increase over the multi-year projection as well. Benefits are basically a formula tied to the salaries. So you'll see they look pretty consistent. What's nice is that they are now becoming very consistent because those pension increases aren't growing. This portion is not growing either. It's staying directly tied to the salary. Where we did see a lot of changes are in the supplies and services budget. And this is due to those one-time dollars that came in. And those supplies and services, extra contracts to support students, one-time money, speech and psychs, other services. That's where those were invested, and they will fall off in the years ahead, just as I talked about with the revenues as well. And capital outlay actually increased because some of those funds for the after-school program, the extended learning opportunities program, we might use to invest in some of our facilities to make those viable and functional and up to date for those programs. We're looking at using that. Whether we're able to continue those all year in the future, we'll determine that as those rules and regulations from the state are refined.
This is the 12.181905 million. Is that the same figure that you're talking about?
The 12.181.
In the beginning of your executive summary, you talk about how there's unrestricted dollars, one-time dollars. They could then became restricted. That was a really significant development.
Right.
So a lot of these one-time dollars that we now see reflected in the first interim, will there not be much flexibility in how to use them?
Right. Those two, that $12.1 million is specifically the arts and music grant that came through,
Okay.
and then the learning recovery grant.
Okay.
So, and those originally in May, when they were speaking, there was just $12 million of discretionary, and then they decided to have focus put on them and they became restricted dollars. So it actually was a little more than what was talked about in May by a couple $100,000, but became restricted. So we'll have to see how to optimize those dollars. And I think as we go through and look at our ending fund balances, we'll talk about how we have to optimize those restricted resources to keep ourselves going.
With the learning recovery funds, what does that look like when it comes to how we spend that money?
Those ones, and I might have to rely on Melina here, expire, I believe, in 25, 26. So we have to use those the next 3 years.
Mhm.
They have a shelf life, and then the arts and music, I think, go 1 year longer. I remember
Okay.
those dates right. So we'll use those. And this is separate from the Prop 28 arts and music that just passed on the ballot.
Okay.
So those are not the same things. They will function in similar ways, but that will be an ongoing resource for us in the future.
When do we see those funds?
23, 24, we'll put those in the budget.
Thank you.
So there you'll see on the next slide is just kind of the visual. And right now you'll see that between the salaries and the benefits, I think it's about 71% that of our budget that goes to that. That's probably lower because we've had so much other spending come in on the supplies and services. We'll see that trend up as that supplies and services decline. So then looking at the kind of bottom of our budget page, the kind of revenue versus expenditures and kind of the, are we running positive or are we running negative? This year, we are running very positive. In the first interim, we're running 3 times as positive as we were at the approved budget. And that's again, largely because of that 6.7% increase to the LCFF base. And that leaves us with an ending fund balance of 36 million, which sounds very healthy, but much of that is restricted as Trustee Pacheco was just asking about. And on the next slide, I'll kind of show you how some of the funds are restricted and others are general. In the out years, you'll see our budget revenue falls off, as we talked about. Unfortunately, our expenditures fall off, but they are not falling off as much as our revenues. So what that means is that as we spend down those reserves, we get to the point where in 24, 25, on current projections, we would need to transfer in about 1.8 million to the general fund to keep us balanced so we can meet all of our requirements for the 3% and the restricted funds. And those show up on the next slide. Here you'll see the beginning balance for this year with the first interim is 24 million. That 12 million excess that we are expecting on just the revenues versus expenditures. But of that $36 million, 75% of it are restricted funds. Those are funds we can't just use willy-nilly. We have to follow the very specific guidelines that were given for those funds. We're also, as a district of our size, required to keep 3% in reserves. That's the 4.48 million. And that leaves us with a little over 5 million left on the bottom here at the end of first interim. As you carry that forward, we get into that deficit spending in 23, 24. So that starts to eat away at those reserves. We're spending down those restricted dollars. There's not as many of them. We still have to set aside that 3% of 4.1 million for our reserves. And the amount we have in unassigned is shrinking and gets completely consumed in the third year out in 24, 25. That's why we need to do the transfer in. So while we have an ending fund balance of 24 million, 20 million of that is restricted and 4 million of it is required reserve. So, so those kind of extra dollars have dissipated. So the goal here is to really watch our multi-year and see how we progress, see what the COLAs come in. The governor's proposal will come out in January, and that will give us a good idea looking forward and see what updates we get. We'll also have to figure out how do we optimize those restricted revenues so that we can spend those down and maybe not touch into the unrestricted as much. And just watch the COLA. There's talk that the COLA based on inflation may be higher next year. So how does that impact us? But if state revenues aren't being collected as much as they think, will they fully fund the COLA? So those are all the variables that will come into play, and we'll have kind of a stay tuned for our second interim report. Is there another question?
Yeah, so I'm just looking back at the adopted budget from June.
Mhm.
And when I look at the budget narrative, I hope I'm misunderstanding this, but you know, there was a deficit of 6.1 million in 23-24 and a deficit of 7.3 million in 24-25. We were going to do a transfer in of 6.5 million from the special reserve. That was the approved budget during June, right? And then for this interim, the deficit is 9.4 million in 24-25, and which is, I guess, a bigger number than.
Right. But it shifted, whereas in 23-24, we were looking at having some deficit spending in the budget, if I remember correctly. So this first interim is improved. And again, a good deal of that improvement comes from the 7 million plus we got from the increased in LCFF base. And then in the out years, the growth on top of that additional. So it's shifted it. We'll eventually have to do a contribution, but we're good and positive until the third year out.
So we're not going to need to transfer in the 6.5 million from special reserve as we approved in June. Like as this first interim reflects, it's going to be 1.8, right?
1.8 is what we're projecting at this point. Correct.
That's good.
That's yeah. So and again,
Yeah.
it's a better place where we were. Now we will have some, as we put in the salaries, that will change things as we get to second interim as well too. If the COLA increases due to inflation, that could change things on the revenue side. So there are quite a few balls in play still. So,
As Associate Superintendent Evans mentioned, during the budget approval, the final state budget hadn't been fully approved either. And so that additional COLA that was added to the base really did help us with our multi-year. So there's where you see a significant area shift where we don't have to do the contributions from the special reserve as soon as we needed to prior. And so it helps us maintain some of that reserve further out to the out years.
And are the assumptions for COLA the same as they were in June as they are now? The 5.38 and 4.02?
I think, what, have they changed it all on the dartboard? I don't think we have a new dartboard since the budget, do we? Just the extra? Yeah, the 6.7 was a little higher than we had expected. What we were hearing when we first got the information, I think it was a 6.5. We were like just under 13, and now with the 6.7, we're just over 13. But another thing about that $7 million that we got this year, we get it every year. So when you look at the 3-year budget, it's a $21 million impact on our budget.
So absent that is absent was absent for the current year and the out years without that additional COLA.
Okay, thank you.
On the next slide, just kind of where we go from here, we expect, and we're putting in for a positive budget certification, which is a good thing for the upcoming bond board items that we have to talk about with bond. And as I've mentioned several times, the governor's budget proposal in January will be an important kind of marker for us to kind of gear what's coming up in the 23-24 school year. And in we'll have our second interim, and that's due in March 15th. So we'll keep you posted. Are there any other questions I can answer about the first interim?
For your first interim, great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so if the recommendation is to request that the Board of Trustees approve the first interim. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Assistant Superintendent Evans. It was very thorough, and I appreciate your presentation. At this time, may I please have a first second for a motion?
I didn't have a question, but I did have a comment. School budgets are incredibly difficult to understand. And even those that work with them it's a continuous learning process. So I just want to really appreciate how you've broken it down in an accessible way for folks to follow and understand. And I also really appreciate your acknowledgement of the holistic view of ADA, that the fiscal impact is only one part of it, but there's a whole child and the benefits of them actually being in attendance. So I also just want to appreciate your acknowledgement of that as well. And thank you for the thorough report.
Thank you, Trustee Jacob.
I'll make a
Oh,
motion.
open it. Yep.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the 22-23 first interim report.
Second.
Are there any public comments at this time? I see none in person.
Virtually.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from trustees?
Just one.
Yes, of course.
So something that I'm just trying to track closely for the district is our chronic absenteeism data. I know that there's been a pause in the collection of that data due to the pandemic and all of that, but how does that data impact our own assumptions for ADA?
And right now, Melina has our assumptions going forward having a lower than our traditional ADA rate. So if we see our ADA rate going back up and we move closer to 96%, that would actually be a positive impact on our revenues as well.
How would you assess our current chronic absenteeism data in relation to?
I think we're suffering from the same things many of the districts are, that just kind of people getting back on track. And, you know, they're doing oftentimes what we're asking them to do, be cautious and stay home, which is a double-edged sword for us. But, you know, when I was principal, it was like, I don't want to give you 100% reward because I don't want to encourage you to be here when you're sick because it only gets 2 other people sick and then they miss out as well. So I think it is a fine line to balance to come to school, learn as you get the optimum, but also take care of yourself and stay healthy. So
Thanks.
All right, at this time, we do have a first and second. So may I please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez,
Sorry, Rochelle, could you repeat that, please?
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. That leads us to our action item 8.3, resolution number 1420-12 22 certifying results of the November 8th, 2022 general obligation bond election. Superintendent Monzo.
Thank you, President Hernandez. It gives us a great pleasure to introduce these next three items. As you know, the board met in July, and actually at a special meeting, you added an additional meeting to take action to place a measure on the November ballot to call for a bond election for our district. And as a result of that outcome from the board's action to place it on the agenda, the district was successful in passing bond measure P at 65 point something. I can't remember the exact number.
0.01.
0.01. I knew you would know. Passage rate, which is tremendous. And so I want to acknowledge the work of very many people. Certainly our business division, the subcommittee that met on a weekly basis to work on getting the word out and in support of Measure P. I know as part of Walking Districts, our OGA partners also shared the information related to Measure P as they were doing so within our community. And so now we have the benefit of approximately $236 million to make improvements and to re-envision how we can create greater impacts inside of our learning and teaching environments for kids. And so these items tonight are the initial steps of moving through that process that will ultimately result in allowing us to access the initial allocation of some of those resources. And so I couldn't resist but stealing some thunder again, but I'll turn it over to Associate Superintendent Evans to introduce this item.
Yeah, I think you've explained it beautifully, and no concerns with thunder stealing here. But our next step after getting through the election is for the board to actually certify the results. So that would be the first action you would take to certify the results, and we'll send that off with our bond counsel, Courtney Jones, and off to the county as well. And then that will get us rolling to take the next steps to issue our first bond. So the request is that recommendation is that you certify the board of adopt the resolution certifying to the Board of Supervisors that the general obligation bond election was accurate and 65.01%.
And before we take action on that item, so Superintendent Evans, would you please do us the honor of introducing some of our partners that are here with us tonight?
Yes, and we'll be hearing from them. We have Courtney Jones from Jones Hall, our bond counsel, John Barassi from Raymond James, our underwriters, and Kush Gayara, yes, from CFW, our financial advisor. So they will be putting together the whole package for going to our first issue.
Thank you for being here.
Tonight.
Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and kick us off then, and I'll move that the Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 1420-1222, certifying to the Board of Supervisors of Santa Clara County all proceedings of the November 8th, 2022 general obligation bond election.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Jacob. At this time, are there any public comments? Seeing none in person, any virtually, Rochelle?
Virtually.
Any questions or comments from trustees?
I do have one thing. This is a comment from somebody else. They emailed this to us, but I think it's important that we read it. Good evening, all. Unfortunately, I'm working late tonight and cannot be there in person and would like to communicate public comment regarding 8.5, the issuance and sale of GO bonds. My name is Casino Fajardo, and I'm a parent of 2 children who attend Santa Teresa Elementary School and a proud supporter of the district's bond measure. As a parent, please accept my gratitude and support to the district for the approval of this resolution. I look forward to experiencing the potential improvements to the indoor-outdoor eating areas, bicycle storage, special education spaces, equipment, and additional natural daylight As a K-12 Director of Facilities and Construction, I can attest to the positive impact that these funds can have towards improving the physical learning environments for our students and increasing the wellness of certificate and classified staff. Shout out to Mr. Lapori, his staff, and his district support team. They have done incredible work in supporting my sons. My wife and I have been so happy with the quality of education for our children and support we have received as parents. Thank you again to the community district staff, superintendent, and board of education to your hard work. Casino Fajardo.
Thank you, Member Pacheco, for elevating that comment. Seeing no other public comments or, sorry, go ahead, Member Martinez.
I just want to congratulate the school for passing the bond and for everyone that was involved in the campaign. I know it's not easy walking precincts and getting people to support the bond, and I'm looking forward to the improvements.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments?
Sorry, that was like for 8.5, but it was like, 8.3. Awesome.
They're all related. They're all related. All right.
Great. So we do have a first and second. So may I please have a roll call vote at this time?
Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to item 8.4, resolution number 1421 -1222, adopting amended bylaws governing Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. Superintendent Monzo.
I will not steal any thunder on this. I'll
Okay.
just turn it directly over to Superintendent Evans.
Thank you. One of the things, our bond, it's called a Prop 39 bond. It requires a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. That allows us to have the 55% approval rating versus the 2/3 rating, which was another form of school bonds. But when you do that, then you have a group, kind of a Brown Act committee underneath the board that is the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and make sure that the funds are being spent as they were laid out in the item that was voted upon. So, and we have an existing oversight committee because of our current Measure S. And then this will just fold into that. So we basically modified the existing bylaws for our Measure S committee and updated it to include Measure P 2022. Any questions I can answer for you?
I've seen districts that have similar oversight committees include board members as part of those committees as well, sometimes just to like listen in or whatever. Is there going to be board representation on this committee as well?
There hasn't been historically board members on the committee, since the majority or the main responsibility of the committee is ensuring that the funds that were already expended mirror the language or the requirements of the bond. And so it's not a committee that makes decisions about what, when, or any of that nature of engagement. Is more engagement related to the bond language said that you were going to spend these dollars on these type of projects. Did you spend it on those type of projects that qualify for based on bond language? And so at a more meaningful level, all of the board will be making decisions around, what are our priorities for our schools? And you'll have that information because you're doing that as we're continuing to work through the expenditure of those proceeds and those funds as part of that process. And the Citizens Oversight Committee has very specific designations in terms of the makeup and composition of the committee that would meet the statutory requirements. And so that's why historically we haven't had that representation on the board, since the board is very actively engaged at the upfront in the process of identifying and ultimately approving the projects themselves. But we have legal counsel here if I've missed anything or. Okay.
Nothing that prevents a board member from attending a Citizens Oversight Committee meeting, being mindful of the Brown Act restrictions, of course. But and that is accurate, that the 7 members are volunteers from the community and not board members or staff members.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
All right. I don't believe we've done a first, right?
No, we haven't taken a motion yet.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will open up the floor, trustees, for a first and second for a motion.
I move to approve the adoption of the let me get on the right one. Approve the adoption of the amended bylaws governing the District Citizens Bond Oversight Committee as presented.
Second that motion.
Are there any public comments at this time? I see none in person.
None virtually.
Any other questions or comments from trustees? All right, we have a first and second. May I have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. This now leads us to item 8.5, resolution number 1422-1222, authorizing the issuance and sale of 67,650,000 general obligation bonds 2022 election, series A1 and A2. Superintendent Monson.
Yes, thank you, President Hernandez, and I'll turn this over to Associate Superintendent Evans. And just as a note, as we go through this procedure, just know that at a future date, there'll be additional information related to actual priorities. And so this, again, is just kicking us off into finalizing the process so we can go out to market and acquire the resource, the funds for the bond. But Associate Superintendent Evans.
Thank you. Yeah, the resolution authorizing the issuance is the first step that we will take as a district, that you will take as a board to move forward with the issuing of these $67,650,000 worth of bonds for our program. It will go from here to the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors to be approved, because the bonds are all issued through the county, and we'll be working with our underwriter, John Barrissey at Raymond James, as well as Kush and Courtney in getting this all laid out. At this point, you'll notice the resolution has blank spaces. As we fill those in and lay out the plan, those will be filled in with all the specifics of what those bonds are, the rates and the terms. But because we don't go to market for a while, it's too early to put those in. But this resolution gets that ball rolling, and our team will be working in the month ahead, 6 weeks, to get to the point of actually going to market with the bonds. And Kush, I think, has a short presentation. If you are able to share that, Mr. Ladd.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kush Kiara with CFW. Very pleased to be here tonight. Congratulations to the new board members and to Ms. Pacheco on your election. And congratulations to the district on the success of the bond program. I think as Superintendent Manzo mentioned, voters trust you enough to trust you with $236 million. And they voted at almost a 2/3 level of approval. When you get that, it goes beyond a good campaign. It goes beyond a good bond program. It's a reflection on the work the board, the staff, the teachers in your district are doing to get that level of support from your community. So congratulations on that success. By way of background, the first page, please. By way of background, your district has had previous bond measures. The first bond measure going back in time was approved in 95. There was a bond measure approved in 2008, and there was a bond measure approved in 2014. All of those bonds have been sold to date, and those funds have been used to improve your schools. You've been, over the last 20, 25 years, have been improving your school facilities. The district has also availed itself of opportunities to refinance bonds, just like, as you may recall, many folks took advantage of historically low interest rates to refinance home mortgages. Your district has always looked out for opportunities to save your local taxpayers' monies. And when those opportunities have presented itself, the board has acted to take those steps. And since 2015, there's been about $50 million of funds that we've been able to save your taxpayers by refinancing debt at over market rates to a lower rate. These bonds are paid back by property taxes levied. So anytime we can lower the payments on the bonds, you're lowering the property tax levy. and reducing the burden on the community. The bond funds from all the previous bonds have been used very effectively to bring all your schools up to a well-functioning standard. But as I think you know, there's additional work that needs to be done. Most of the work was to the buildings, to the exteriors, and there's additional needs for safety and security improvements for students, teachers, and staff, as well as transforming classroom environments to bringing them up to a more modern standard. That was the purpose, the primary purpose of the Measure P authorization. As Superintendent Manzo mentioned, we intend to issue approximately $67 million as the first authorization of the 236. That will leave about almost $170 million, $169 million for the future. That is typical. Bonds are issued over time because when you issue bonds, you need to have a reasonable expectation that you will use those monies within 3 years. And it would be hard to digest $200 million without completely impacting your schools. So at this point, it's a not to exceed $67 million that we intend to be able to issue as the first issuance. Over time, the authorization never expires. And just as you've done with your prior bonds, as you have needs and as the tax base supports the issuance of additional bonds, we will keep your staff informed. And as and when there is a need, we will come back to you with information in the future to determine when the additional bonds get issued. Next page, please. So the main purpose of Measure P was to modernize classrooms and improve student and teacher access to technology, to upgrade science labs, learning spaces, supporting robotics, engineering, STEM education, improve school safety and security throughout, with examples including lighting, fencing, controlled access to classrooms and schools, and then provide additional facilities to enhance education programs. No funds from this measure can go into your general fund. These are funds that can only be used for facilities improvements, for construction and improvements. It has the effect often of enabling your general fund, helping your general fund, because if you have new or modernized facilities, the cost of maintenance typically tends to be lower. The HVAC breaks down less often, less repairs and maintenance. So there will be some indirect savings to the general funds, but all of these $236 million must be used for facilities, construction, modernization and improvement projects, as well as the purchase of equipment and technology within certain boundaries. So the steps to issue the bonds, if the next page, please, thank you. The steps to issue the bonds is we're here today to kick off the process. And if the school board does in fact approve the resolution, the next step will be to go ahead and seek a bond credit rating from the rating agencies. Just like all of us have personal credit ratings, the district has a credit rating. Your district is very highly rated right now as a AA3, which, to put that in perspective, is one notch above an A+. Most folks think the A+ is the highest rating you can get, but there's ratings above, and you are rated AA3. It was very informative to see Mr. Evans' presentation today about your district's budgets. The board manages this district very pragmatically. The funding and the funding sources are well managed. That's going to be an area of focus from the rating agencies. They'll also look at other factors to be able to determine the rating for you, which include the strength of your local economy. Are folks here to stay? Are they going to be paying their property taxes? Or what are the employment opportunities over here? All which we think we're going to be very strong on. The challenges we're going to face is historically your enrollment has declined, and declining enrollment puts a pressure on any school district budget. And we're going to have to explain that. I think your enrollment is going to stabilize as we look forward. I'm hoping it does, and maybe somewhere in the future begin to grow. But we are going to have to explain how the district has weathered the storm of declining enrollment. Further, an item that's going to put downward pressure on our rating is the storm clouds of a potential recession are on the horizon. And when there is a recession in the state of California, it does impact school funding. And that's going to be a matter of concern. Of course, we're going to indicate that this is not the first recession the district has had to weather. We've been through it, and we're going into it with a strong financial position. We've taken steps in the past to be able to address the decline in enrollment. So we will be working with your superintendent and your CBO to prepare a presentation. They will deliver the presentation to the rating analysts. In the old days, we take them up to San Francisco to meet with them. Today it's mostly done by Zoom. But there's probably an hour and a half long interview where we will present positive information and attempt to mitigate any negative information. I fully anticipate we're going to be able to keep our rating despite some of the downward pressures we face going into the next couple of years. So we will report back to you after the rating at the conclusion of the bond sale. But once again, I fully anticipate we'll be able to maintain our rating. As then mentioned, we do go to the Santa Clara Board of Supervisors. They will adopt some documents as well. Subsequent to that, Mr. Barisi's firm will disseminate to potential investors a bond prospectus, about a 100-page document. We used to actually print those books and overnight them many years ago. Today, of course, we just post that information on the internet, on a website, which gives the factors of your district's strengths and like your enrollment, your budgets, your assessed valuation, who your employers are in the area. And that's presented to investors so they can make an informed decision as to whether they want to buy your bonds or not buy your bonds. Once that's completed, so once if the board adopts the documents, once we have the rating in hand, and once the prospectus is posted, one of the final steps is then to go into the market and sell your bonds. And unlike a Tesla stock or an Apple stock, there is no published price for an Oak Grove School District bond. The price of the Oak Grove School District bond is what investors are willing to pay on that particular day that you go into the market. So that is a negotiation process that occurs with the team, with investors. We will invite the county treasurer's office to participate as well. But it is a process whereby based on what other bonds are selling, what comparable transactions have occurred, and what your bonds are trading for on the secondary market, an interest rate is established. Mr. Barisi's firm will give the district a proposal, and then the district staff on a phone call, this is one of those things that still works on the spoken word, will agree to the bond sale. Eventually, everything gets documented in writing, but there'll be a phone call that I know your superintendent and your CBO at his former district have been through many times, where you agree to the bond sale and $67 million of bonds gets sold on the spoken word. Finally, once that occurs in about 2 weeks, Ms. Jones's firm will work on closing the transaction, at which point the monies will be available. They'll be deposited in the county account, and you can begin your school improvement projects. So tonight, there were 3 resolutions that you were considered. You've been through the first 2, certifying the election result, and the second one, adopting bylaws or amending the bylaws. The third resolution, which is now for consideration, is where the board establishes the parameters to go out and issue these bonds, and then delegates to staff and the financing team to go out and actually effect the sale. So in addition to the resolution you may have received 2 other pieces of information. One is a draft of the preliminary official statement. If you remember, that's the prospectus I had mentioned that goes out to potential investors. And you'll also see a draft of a copy of the purchase agreement, which may have been issued to you. And the purchase agreement is a document that essentially is the contract between the district and the underwriting firm to sell the bonds. But the resolution specifies the terms, okay? And the next page gives you a peek into what we may see. Please understand all of these are preliminary and these are subject to change. We won't be pricing or selling these bonds, locking in interest rates for the next 45 to 60 days. And these are estimates looking into the crystal ball as to where we are today. But where we'll actually be at the time of the bond sale depends, once again, on supply and demand and market factors. So at this point, we anticipate selling up to $67.6 million of bonds. That's the amount that we anticipate going into the market with. The bond will have a term of slightly less than 30 years. Most school bonds have a term of 30 years, just like a home mortgage typically has a 30-year term. We think we can do this in slightly less if we can do it in shorter. Anytime you go shorter, a 15-year mortgage has a lower payment than a 30-year mortgage. Unlike most home loans, school bonds are not locked in, choose 15 or 30. You can choose any number of years that you want to go up to technically 40 years, but that starts getting expensive money. So we're looking at a term of less than 30 years at this point. At the time we prepared this presentation, this is probably the most important number. I anticipated that the interest rate to be about 4.6% to borrow the monies. We've actually had a slight improvement in interest rates in the last week or so. That number, if we were to lock in interest rates today, Mr. Barresi, would that be closer to about 4.4%? We would be a little bit less than that. And I know 4.6 and 4.4 doesn't sound like a lot, but every 1/10 of 1% on $67 million over 27 years is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we look very closely at the numbers to the right of the decimal place to bring them down to the number, the lowest possible cost. We want to sell these bonds at the lowest possible cost because those savings get passed on to taxpayers. So we anticipate the total cost of issuance to be about $500,000. That's the cost of legal counsel, underwriters, rating agency, financial advisors fees, all of the associated fees involved, which is about a little bit less than 1%, about 7.75%. And then the total repayment over time, just like when you borrow a home loan, when you borrow the principal, you have to pay back principal and interest. We anticipate that to be about $150 million over time. I do want to stop over here for a moment and commend the district. Superintendent Manzo had indicated that the board had taken some decisive actions to call the election in the month of July. What the intent of this bond program is we do not want to raise tax rates on folks in your community. So the way this bond program is, the intended structure of this bond program is, as the old bonds get paid down and they don't need payments anymore for those old bonds, those bonds from the prior authorizations, those revenues will be made available to these new bonds. And it is the goal of the program to maintain a level, stable tax rate and not increase taxes on your folks, and simultaneously substantially improve local schools for the safety of the teachers, staff, students, and also the beneficial impact on communities as well as property prices of improved schools. So I do want to commend the board on electing to go with that scenario that does not increase your property tax rates, is not anticipated to increase your property tax rates while still delivering improvements to the schools. So the very last slide that I have then is just some general disclosures, but we anticipate that this transaction will be completed within the next 60 days. We're hoping to go into the market as quickly as we can. And the reason for that, selling bonds is about demand and supply. Right now, there is not a lot of supply of bonds in the market. And the last couple of bonds that my firm has sold in the last week or 10 days have all been oversubscribed, which means there's many more folks who want to buy your bonds than there are bonds available to sell. That's a great place to be, because selling bonds, the price, the interest rate of the bonds, once again, is based on demand and supply. In November, there was about $20 billion of school and community college bonds on the ballot. Most of them are going to come to market in February and March. We're trying to get ahead, and we appreciate the board considering this action tonight. We're trying to get ahead. We're trying to get into the market in January itself before some of that supply comes in the market. Hopefully the supply will be low, the demand will still be robust, and that in turn will translate to the best possible cost of borrowing. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I know this is a lot of information that I've provided to you tonight. Happy to answer any questions, and my colleagues and the other teammates are over here as well to answer questions.
I have questions. I have two. Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate how fast you're trying to make this happen to get ahead of the market. What does the timeline look like for getting it on the agenda of the board of supervisors? Is that going to happen in January, February? And my second question related to that is this something that is so procedural that it just gets approved on their consent agenda? So how does that happen?
We intend to go to the Board of Supervisors meeting in mid-January. We're scheduled to go, I think it's the third week of January, actually, that we're scheduled. We've been in communication with them. We have sent them preliminary documents, and they will be considering them. I'll defer to Ms. Jones, but I believe, as far as I'm aware, their action is more ministerial in the approval, and they're not there in an advisory capacity, but I'll defer to you.
And then my last question is, When the Federal Reserve increases short-term borrowing rates like they just did yesterday, how does that impact the interest rates for our own bonds?
Great question, Mr. Pacheco. You are correct that the Federal Reserve has been increasing rates steadily over the last several months. And there's at least one additional rate increase that is anticipated for the first part of next year of a quarter point. All the rate increases, like the rate increase of 0.5 point that just occurred, are already baked into the market. So the interest rates today assume those rates increases are going to come. And those rate increases are not anticipated to change interest rates much.
Okay.
What would change is we're expecting a quarter point rate increase to come. If in fact the Federal Reserve turns around and says, you know what, we changed our minds, we're not going to raise rates, folks, interest rates will actually go down. Or if they say, you know what, we said we're going to raise it a quarter point, we're actually going to raise it a 0.5 point, then interest rates will go up. So if something unexpected happens, it's likely to change interest rates. But interest rates with the last Federal Reserve increase of 0.5 point that occurred this week, Mr. Barresi, my understanding is the bond market barely, it didn't. So those are anticipated, those are baked in. It's not that rates rise along with the Federal. If the Federal Reserve does something unexpected, yes, we'll see a change in the market. But we have baked in and factored into all of our numbers the fact that not only the last Federal Reserve increase that occurred earlier this week, but the anticipated next Federal Reserve increase have been baked into these numbers. Barring any very dramatic changes in the world political scene, we don't expect interest rates to change dramatically one way or the other. But these are favorable rates. These are not historic lows. We hit historic lows some time ago, but these are pretty much on the average of where we've been. Some of you folks may know at one time mortgage rates were actually in the double digits. And then we saw mortgage rates going down to as low as 2% and 3%. Today, they're probably more like 5 or 6%. So interest rates are close to where historical rates have been. And it'll be our goal to be able to structure these bonds to be able to get the best possible, lowest possible borrowing cost, and to be able to work towards keeping that flat tax rate.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the thoroughness of the presentation. You mentioned that you don't anticipate property taxes going up, and that was the promise. I'm just curious, what are the circumstances that would increase property taxes, if any?
Thank you, ma'am. This is a very good question. And what I was referring to is the property tax rates. Okay? And what a property tax rate is, right now, for example, the district is paying, voters in your district are paying roughly $60, a little over $60, about $62 per 100,000 of assessed valuation against their property. The intent is to maintain that tax. So what could cause that tax rate to go up and what could cause that tax rate to go down? And why is this only an estimate that was provided at the time of the election? And it was not a commitment. It is what's the main driver for what's going to happen with property taxes is the value of properties in your community. If the values of property go up, the tax rate is inversely proportional. If a couple of new condo complexes get built, if property values increase, the tax rate will actually go down because you can spread that bond repayment over more properties. The flip side is, if we go into another recession or when we go into another recession, when property prices actually decline, then the county will actually raise the tax rate. But that whether you issue new bonds or not, ma'am, that statement remains true because that would be true for your existing bonds as well. If there was drops in property values, and there probably will be over time, but it's our goal and it's our intent to maintain as stable a property profile as possible. And once again, the way we're doing it, I don't want to lead you to believe that anyone's going to lend us this money for free. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we will pay back those bonds to absorb any drops, all the old bonds as they get paid off. Remember, we had bonds going back to 1995. Many of those are rolling off. They're being paid off in fully. They're maturing. So the revenues that we would have been pledged to those bonds are now going to be made available to the new bonds we get.
Thank you.
Just an additional fact, I know that as part of the structure of the bonds that we've issued, the assumptions that have always been used have been fairly conservative in terms of the projected growth. What's the
The assessed value.
The assessed value, yes, thank you. And so as an example, I think we've used typically around a 3 to 4% assessed value growth assumption. But over the past number of years, that growth actually came in at 6 or 7, or in some time, I believe 1 year, almost 10. And so we've always saw, the approach has always been to do the projections based on very conservative assumptions to also help offset some of those potential shifts that might occur within the market. Is that an accurate statement, Kush?
That's exactly right. We try and be conservative. We can't, of course, know for sure in the future, but yeah, all of the bonds that we've sold since you've taken over your role as Superintendent Manzo, have been the assumed rate of growth has been below what the actual rate of growth has been. So we have taken a more conservative stance. And I don't think anyone in the community would complain if the tax rates decline over time.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from trustees? Seeing none, may we please have a first and second for a motion?
Okay, here it is. I move that the Board of Trustees adopt resolution number 1422-22/22 authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds 2022 election series A-1 and A-2 and the combined principal amount of not to exceed 67,650,000 for voter approved technology and capital facilities projects and approving preliminary official statement bond purchase agreement and all related documents and actions in connection therewith.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, we have a first and second. May I please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. This does bring us now to item 8.6, declaration of emergency roof and water damage at 500 Shawnee Lane, Dickinson Elementary. Superintendent Manzo.
Thank you, President Hernandez. And again, thank you to our partners and for being here in person. I will ask our Associate Superintendent to introduce this item.
Hello, yes, this resolution is for some emergency repairs at our facility on formerly Dickinson Elementary. Typically, when we have to do repairs, we have very stringent rules on going out to bid, but at times, and in this case, there was a leak and caused water damage, and we want to get to fixing that quickly so we don't have any health issues resulting from that. So we passed an emergency resolution authorizing the work to be done without going through the typical bond or bidding process because of the matter of urgency. So this is an issue to repair the roofs and any of the water damage within the buildings, to get the buildings up to safe and functioning condition.
Associate Superintendent Evans, I believe there's also a component that we are able to submit some of this for our claim for our insurance.
Yes, we will submit an insurance claim for the water damage as well. So that should, we look forward to that offsetting the cost.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I'll begin with the questions. And one of the questions I had just revolves around more of the reporting process that we currently have, especially with folks who are leasing, right, or renting properties. So maybe what were the steps that led for it to be an emergency level, and how could we have prevented it maybe earlier on? Or what does that process look like?
It appears, what I understand is that there was some settling in the roof where water was puddling rather than getting to the drains. that was going unnoticed. And we're actually looking to see if there were some things that could have been prevented or how we could have been aware of that sooner.
Mhm.
With our lease properties, there are parts that the tenant is responsible
Right.
for, but roof, foundations, the structural elements, I kind of refer to it as a condo type situation where we take care of the infrastructure of the building and the interior walls and all are there. So we're kind of assessing what could we have done to be more aware of the fact that these were
Right.
wearing out or puddling.
And what does that reporting look like right now? Is that generally that they, call you guys or send you an email, like in terms of how does that communication work?
Yeah, they have their own maintenance and facilities, people who
Mhm.
take care of the property, and then they communicate with our maintenance. Gabe Altamirano is, our chief operations officer, and he would be the contact person for them if they have needs or situations that arise with some of those infrastructure elements.
Got it. Thank you.
So Superintendent Evans, is it possible to kind of following the line of questions from President Hernandez? Is it possible to work with the tenant to do a periodic inspection at some of the kind of the major functioning items for a facility that could be kind of on a sequence or a schedule basis so that maybe something like that might help early identify some of these issues? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. I can talk with Mr. Altamirano and see, one, is there a history of that? If
Right.
not, can we implement kind of same way we do our facility inspection tool for our
Right.
sites? Can we be doing that for our lease properties to be ahead of these types of things?
I would-
That would be really.
Yeah, no, I would really appreciate that. And thank you for extending sort of my thought process there. I think the secondary question I have then is looking at our schools now. Have we heard any reports that just because of the rainfall we were receiving, how are our own roofs doing? Any major issues that we're tackling?
Nothing
right now?
major. I don't know if you have heard anything at OGA, but we
Mhm.
typically do have some leaks when we have
Right.
strong downpours and all, but no major ones or standing
Mhm.
water that cause damage like this.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but it is something, yes, to constantly monitor.
Right.
I think a lot of the previous bond dollars in Measure S really went to a lot of the roofing work and all. We just did
Mhm.
frost this past summer. So, but then there becomes the routine, every so many years doing a fresh seal coat or keeping up on those things to get the optimum life out of that roof project. Yeah, the fit reports there exactly are function in that way for our operating schools.
Got it. Well, thank you so much. And again, I appreciate the extension of just us maybe having more of a clear protocol with our tenants of what that looks like, taking care of our property. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Are there any public comments virtually?
None.
I see none in person. Go ahead, Superintendent.
We still, I believe, need a motion for this item.
Yes. And now do we have a first and second for a motion? I'll go ahead and open the floor.
I move that the Board of Trustees ratify the declaration of an emergency due to the roof and water damage at 500 Shawnee Lane.
I second. May we please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez?
Aye.
Member Jacob?
Hi.
Member Pacheco?
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez?
Aye.
President Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. This now leads us to our last action item of the night, Board Policy 1230, School Connected Organization. Superintendent Manso?
Yes, this just brings up this policy that speaks to school organizations, homeschool clubs, PTAs, and other organizations that support our schools with various activities, and brings it up to date with some of the requirements and recommendations from CSBA. Since this is brought to you outside of all some of the other board policies that typically would come up that we discussed in the past, since these organizations are ongoing and functioning on a regular and consistent basis, we wanted to reflect those changes right away for sharing the areas that were impacted. So I'd like to recommend that the board approve board policy 1230 and based on board policy or bylaw 9311 to waive the second reading and adopt the policy 1230 school connected organization.
I'll go ahead and move that the Board of Trustees approve Board Policy 1230 first reading and as per Board Bylaw 9311, waive second reading and adopt Board Policy 1230 school connected organization.
Second.
Any public comment? Seeing none, any comments or questions from trustees? All right, seeing none, we do have a first and second. May we please have a roll call vote?
Member Martinez,
Aye.
Member Jacob,
Aye.
Member Pacheco,
Aye.
Vice President Gonzalez,
Aye.
President Hernandez,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. That does conclude our action items for the night and moves us to our information items. We only have one tonight, the financial audit reports. Superintendent Monso.
Yes, and I will have our Associate Superintendent Evans. This has been a business office show today, a lot of
Yes.
activities.
Me again.
Yes. Associate Superintendent Evans.
Thank you. Each year, the district goes through an annual audit on its books, and that is presented to the board. In addition, because we have bond funds, Measure S, we have an audit on those funds as well. So there are actually two audits being presented to you. The general one for our overall budget, and then the specific one on the bond. Joining us tonight is Joe Escobar. He's with Eid Bailey, who is our auditing firm, and he's one of the partners there. He's coming in remotely, so I think that we can bring him on via Zoom.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Escobar.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, coming through.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for having me. I'm with the Eid Bailey Menlo Park office. I'm here to present to you today the required communication for the district's financial statements, Measure S financial and performance audits, the federal single audits, state compliance audit, and report as necessary in conformance with government auditing standards. The annual audits are necessary as an external control for the district. We, as independent auditors, plan our audit out to coincide with the calendar year. In the first quarter of the year, we determine the appropriate number of resources, timing, and clarify the scope of the engagements. During this period, or early in the second quarter of the year, site testing will take place. During site testing, we sample specific schools and obtain assurances that attendance is being taken in compliance with state requirements. We also gain an understanding of the internal controls over financial reporting and on our tests of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, and other matters as required by government auditing standards. We provide a report on compliance for each major federal program. This year, there were two major programs, the COVID-19 Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER, and the Title I grants. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies were identified in performance of these audits. We have no audit findings to disclose as to be reported in accordance with Uniform Guidance Title II U.S. Code of Federal Regulations Part 200 Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for federal awards. We are independent of the district, and we believe the audit was performed in such a fashion as to meet our ethical responsibilities, having obtained a sufficient and appropriate level of assurance as a basis for our opinions. Management is responsible for compliance, the design, implementation, and maintenance of effective internal controls. We did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management and performance of the audit, and we did not have any disagreements with the management. In the current year, the district has adopted the provisions of Government Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 87, leases. And when I say current year, I mean the current year under audit. Footnote 18 of the financial statements details the impact of the new accounting standards implementation. Effectively, lease receivables were recognized along with deferred inflows of resources for the recognition of assets, and right to use leased assets were recorded alongside lease liabilities as applicable. In our opinion, these financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. In other words, we provide a clean audit opinion on the financial position, respective changes in financial position, cash flows were applicable for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. Additionally, we have audited the district's compliance with the requirements specified in the 2021-22 guide for annual audits of K through 12 local education agencies and state compliance reporting. In our opinion, the district complied in all material specs with the compliance requirements referred to as applicable to the laws and regulations of the state programs. Lastly, we audited the financials of the Measure S Building Fund program. Likewise, we did not experience any difficulties or disagreements with management and performance of the audit procedures with respect to the Measure S. We noted no matters of non-compliance with respect to the requirements as referred to in Proposition 39 and outlined in the California Constitution and the LEA guide. We tested approximately 73% of total expenditures and performance of audit procedures. Mark, Melina, and their teams were very helpful in performance of these audits. With that, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. It was a big lift for audit firms with all of the new federal dollars and all of the audit requirements. So I want to thank you and your team for helping us out. I also want to make sure I thank Melina Wynn and Ruth Martin. They keep this all organized in the business department. So I want to thank the two of you for just keeping our books straight and on top of things. So congratulations to you. The clean audit really is on your shoulders. Thank you very much for your help with all of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. That was great to hear. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, any questions or comments from trustees? All right, seeing none, thank you again, Associate Superintendent Evans and Mr. Escobar. At this time, that does conclude information items and leaves us to our correspondence, board discussion, and committee reports. We will now hear from board members regarding correspondence from individuals and or organizations regarding district programs or services, and board members that wish to report on meetings attended or other related district matters. I'll open the floor.
Well, I just want to say how grateful I am to our community to be elected and to join you all. And amazed to start with such depth of our budget and financial obligations and responsibilities. I'm really looking forward to just working alongside each of you and getting to know our community that much more, and really working in partnership with our educators, our students, and our community members to continue to grow and to develop and keeping students first. So thank you. Also, I also want to just share that I had the opportunity to attend CSBA and alongside Diego and, Member Martinez and our Superintendent Monzo. And thank you for just kind of taking me under your wing and being available to answer any questions and to clarify. Also just want to say that the staff have been incredibly welcoming and helpful. Thank you, Cecily, also for just making sure we have all the things that we need, and looking forward to working with you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Jacob. Any other comments? Of course, Member Martinez.
I as well wanted to say thank you to Cicely and Superintendent Manzo for allowing me to attend at CSBA. It was a great opportunity to learn and still learning, still about to learn, and it was a good place to learn, network, met a lot of great people there, and looking forward to working with the board and keep learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. First,
Just also thanks to everybody, the superintendent and Cecily for taking care of us and for this really exciting team that is going to lead our district to better, to to continually improve the performance of our students and of our staff. I'm just also really grateful to the public for allowing me to serve another term. And I also really enjoyed visiting CSBA, even if only for one day. And it was really inspirational to see our new trustees engaging with other trustees from across the state. And I can't wait to see the awesome things that this whole board and especially you two will do. So thank you.
Not too much for me. Just welcome to our new board members and happy holidays to our district.
Yes, thank you. I was going to end on that. I don't know how everyone's feeling. I know it's been a heavy couple of weeks, I think, for a lot of different sites and just people, and seems like there's just a lot going on right now. So I just really want to echo the words that we heard from folks tonight of just rest up and take time to be with your loved ones and take time for yourselves. Again, we welcome 2 new board members. I am so excited. And Member Pacheco, of course, very excited to continue working with y'all. So with that, may I please have a motion and second to adjourn the meeting?
Move to adjourn.
Wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The regular board meeting on December 15th, 2022 is adjourned at 8:31 p.m.